It always begins with a place. Not a monster, not a man, not even an idea. A place. And Camp Hero is the kind of place that knows how to keep a secret. On the far edge of Long Island, where the Atlantic hammers the cliffs and the wind carries the taste of metal, Camp Hero sits like a forgotten fortress. By daylight, it poses as a relic, cracked concrete, silent batteries, and a retired military base reborn as a state park. But when dusk swallows the trees and the surf turns black, the land feels older than its paperwork, older and watchful. The official story is polite, almost wholesome. In 1942, America poured steel and sweat into this coastline, bracing for enemy silhouettes that never came. Gun emplacements were poured, barracks built, officers installed. For decades, the base stood as part of a visible defense network, a monument to vigilance. And yet, something in the air here hums differently. The landmark that dominates everything, the colossal radar tower, is no myth. No prop, no trick of memory. It is one of the last survivors of the NFPS-35 series. A Cold War giant with a dish that once raked the sky with unimaginable power. Its official service ended in the early 1980s. Its body stayed a skeletal titan, rusting above the trees. From here, the timeline deepens, hard fact cooling into something stranger. 1942 to 1945. Construction of Camp Hero as coastal defense. 1950s, 1960s. The Cold War expands. Radar research intensifies. Psychological experiments in other agencies become classified in norm. Late 1960s, early 1970s. Witnesses later claim heavy excavation beneath the base new levels. Reinforced labs, sealed corridors where no official blueprints exist. 1970s, early 1980s. Testimonies speak of recruitment. Experiments and a chair wired into the tower's heartbeat. January 1981. Radar. Decommissioned from normal service, but locals recall the tower pulsing long after. August 1983. The night repeatedly whispered as the collapse. A final experiment that fell apart so violently the base itself seemed to recoil. These dates are the spine. The flesh is everything else. Men who claimed their memories were shut off like lights. Mechanics who watched equipment vanish through back gates. Locals who swear the ground trembled in the early morning hours. The facts end where the locked doors begin. Past that line, the world becomes testimony, nightmare, and rumor braided into something too persistent to ignore. A radar tower is undeniable. A tear in time is a claim. And Camp Hero, patient, looming, scarred, stands exactly between those two truths. The surface explanation for Camp Hero's research was harmless enough. Surveillance, early warning systems, coastal defense. But beneath that official rhetoric, in the marrow of the Cold War, the nation's brightest minds were being fed darker questions. Could the human mind be measured like a signal? Could emotion be transmitted? Could thought be harnessed, magnified, and weaponized? Across the country, agencies quietly experimented with hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychotropic drugs, and electromagnetic exposure. Declassified scraps from real programs show an era riddled with scientific hunger and paranoid ambition. Within this climate, the legends say Camp Hero became more than a radar station. It became a laboratory for the boundaries of consciousness. The motives attributed to the secret project read like a staircase. 1. Observation. Record brainwaves. Watch how electromagnetic fields interact with human neural patterns. Nothing supernatural, just science sharpened to a fine edge. 2. Influence. Apply field variations. Encourage calm. Trigger fear. Vend focus. If a single mind could be influenced, perhaps thousands could. 3. Amplification. Here the line began to blur. The theory whispered in those underground rooms was simple, but terrifying. If you amplify a stable mental signal enough, maybe the world around it will respond. 4. Projection and remote perception. Push further. Could a trained mind see beyond the room? Beyond the base, beyond conventional limits. 5. Temporal experiments. This is where testimony stops, sounding like classified science, and becomes something more like a fable told in hushed tones. They synchronized the human mind with the massive radar array. They increased power. They pushed imagery through coils and waveguides until reality itself felt thin. These aims came to the public only through a handful of men, voices weathered by age, haunted by memories they claimed to recover later. Preston Nichols, with his strange calm and technical vocabulary. Al Bileg, weaving tales of timelines and disappearances. Stuart Swerdlow, speaking of psychic training and psychological scars. Whether these men were confessing, exaggerating, or constructing new mythologies is impossible to prove. What matters is the consistency of their narratives, the chair, the coils, the recruitment, the escalation. What matters is that they believed, or needed to believe, that Camp Hero wasn't just a military outpost. It was an experiment in lifting the veil. When you pull back the curtain on any secret program, you meet two kinds of people: the ones you can confirm, and the ones you can only chase through their own stories. Camp Hero was staffed with the usual cast of military roles: guards, radar operators, electricians, clerks. Their names fill old rosters and dusty transfer sheets. They lived in Basehausen, shopped in Montauk, and coached Little League on weekends. But then there are the others. These are the names you encounter in late-night interviews, in self-published books, in recordings made in dim motel rooms. Preston B. Nichols, engineer, storyteller, the originating voice of the Montauk. Narrative. Nichols spoke calmly about memories he said were buried and later restored, about machines he claimed to have helped build. He described the Montauk chair as though reciting a technical manual from the wrong dimension. Al Bielek, a man who said he lived two lives, one in this century and one in another. His stories linked Camp Hero to the Philadelphia experiment, blending timelines into a single thread. He spoke with the certainty of someone remembering a dream too vivid to doubt. Stuart Swerdlow, a witness of psychological ordeals, claiming training in perception and influence. His testimony is fragmented, intense, and unsettling in its repetition. Colors, symbols, emotional conditioning. Around them orbit a ring of unnamed technicians. Faces blurred, names withheld, voices disguised. Some appear only in documentary shadows, insisting that underground corridors existed, that machines the size of subway cars hummed at midnight. And then there were the subjects. The stories claim dozens, maybe more. Young boys, teenagers, individuals described as sensitive, suggestible, or unique. Some were said to come from group homes, others from no clear background at all. A few later adults have appeared with stories of missing time from their youth, memories that feel like bruises. Whether these accounts reflect truth, trauma, or fiction is unknown, but taken together, they form a tapestry thick with dread. Camp Hero's personnel file, the one you can see, is thin. The personnel file that might have existed, the one these witnesses describe, was sealed long before anyone knew to look for it. And the question that hangs over every name is the same: were they part of something real, or were they survivors of a myth that grew too large to escape? According to testimony, the procedures inside the base were clinical in outline but ritualistic in execution, a fusion of science and obsession. The Montauk chair. Imagine a reinforced metal seat surrounded by curved coils and cold instrumentation. Electrodes trace skull and spine. The chair was designed to read the electric whispers of the brain, filter them, and feed them into a system of amplifiers that pulsed through the base's electromagnetic veins. Nichols claimed the output ultimately funneled into the radar tower above, using its colossal dish to project amplified thought like a searchlight. Synchronization. Every session followed a strict cadence. Operators aligned frequencies. Engineers checked phasing. Clock hands were synchronized to the radar's rotation. The humming grew. The air thickened. Subjects reported feeling time stretch or compressed before the tests even began. Remote viewing trials. Subjects were instructed to describe distant rooms, locations, or events. The stories claimed some results were uncanny, details matching places the subjects had never visited. Whether coincidence, intuition, or something stranger, the project leaders continued pushing. Emotional induction. Technicians monitored biological indicators, pulse, galvanic response, EEG. Electromagnetic pulses were adjusted with precision. Subjects shifted from calm to panic, from sorrow to euphoria. The ethics of the experiments, if they ever existed, corroded quickly. Temporal trials. These sessions were the most unsettling. High amplitude, long duration. Witnesses described subjects seeing fragments of events that never happened, or happened years later. Clocks drifted. Instruments froze. Some staff reported feeling watched by something that wasn't in the room. Final escalation. The last months before August 1983 were marked by increasing ambition, longer sessions, greater power, multiple subjects linked simultaneously. The crew chased a stable projection, something concrete, something undeniable, and in that pursuit something finally broke. Whether the effects were psychological, electrical, or something that defies classification is up to the listener. But the testimony is unanimous about one thing. The experiments escalated until the base itself felt like it was breathing. There are two categories of achievement in the Montauk story: the grounded and the impossible. The grounded, proven, undisputed. Camp Hero had a functioning Cold War radar capable of immense power. Intelligence agencies elsewhere did explore remote viewing and mind effect research. Funding flowed heavily to unconventional defense initiatives during the Cold War. But then there are the claimed outcomes. The ones passed through whispered testimony. Remote viewing hits. Subjects allegedly described distant locations with eerie accuracy. Coordinators logged matches. Skeptics called it imagination. Believers called it evidence. Thought form manifestation. Witnesses reported faint distortions appearing in the air when subjects concentrated. Intensely, flickers, shapes, static images appearing on equipment that wasn't plugged in. Temporal distortions. Clocks freezing. Clocks reversing. Staff remembering conversations that never occurred. A technician swore he stepped into a hallway that didn't exist and stepped back out a second later. The Montauk Monster event. The most notorious claim during a high-power session. Something appeared: a mass, a form, an entity generated from amplified thought. Witnesses disagree on its appearance, but agree on one detail: it terrified the staff and destabilized the facility. The beauty and terror of these claims lie in their ambiguity. They sound too fantastical to accept, too consistent to dismiss. As with all mythologies that cling to the real world, the line between hallucination and phenomenon erodes. The engineering is real. The fear in the voices is real. The rest lives in a shadowed space where memory, trauma, and imagination overlap. Every testimony leads to the same point. August 1983, often narrowed to August 12th, the night the project reached its breaking point. The experiments that evening were designed to be the definitive run. The radar tower was powered beyond normal thresholds. Amplifiers throbbed with heat. The Montauk chair hummed like a living thing. Witnesses described the atmosphere as electric, oppressive, wrong. The subject, different names, given by different storytellers, was pushed to amplify a fixed image. The system synchronized. Energy climbed, and then the readings spiked into ranges. The instruments weren't built to interpret. Some say the air tore. Some say a creature emerged. Some say reality itself folded for a moment like a sheet caught in wind. Alarms screamed. Lights died. Voices shouted orders drowned by static. In the chaos, someone made the decision to shut it down manually. Circuits were cut. Generators killed. Power collapsed through the towers and tunnels like a rogue wave. When the dust settled, the underground sections were damaged. Equipment melted and staff shaken to the core. The program wasn't just ended, It was buried. Months later, personnel were reassigned or discharged. Documents vanished. Maps were altered. Camp Hero's public face softened into harmless disrepair, eventually becoming a state park with locked buildings and polite warning signs. Yet locals insist the land still remembers. At night they hear metallic groans beneath the soil. Some claim the tower vibrates on windless evenings. Whether these are echoes of machines or echoes of memory is a question left unanswered. The years after 1983 reshaped the story more than the events themselves. Officially, the base was retired. The radar tower became a landmark. The tunnels became sealed hazards. And eventually, Camp Hero State Park opened its gates, inviting the public to stroll past its rusting guardians. But the myth refused to die. Throughout the 1990s and beyond, books appeared, Nichols most famously, followed by documentaries, interviews, podcasts, and fictional adaptations. Montauk slipped from rumor into culture, from conspiracy into folklore. Some researchers dismissed the entire narrative as fantasy. Others claimed it was a smokescreen hiding real experiments. Still others argued that the witnesses believed their stories because something traumatic happened, something too difficult to articulate. Meanwhile, the land itself kept offering clues to those willing to look. Compasses spinning near sealed doors, electrical interference in abandoned bunkers, motionless animals staring toward the radar tower as if listening. Park workers explain it away. Old wiring, magnetic minerals, environmental hazards. But the people who feel the hum under their feet say otherwise. Montauk's legacy is a stranger kind of truth, not one supported by documents, but by persistence. By the way, certain stories survive even when every official record tries to erase them. The myth endures because it feels like something that could have happened, something that fits too neatly into the darker corners of human ambition. And in the end, that unresolved tension between fact, fear, and the stories of damaged men is what keeps the legend alive. Picture this. You stand at the edge of Camp Hero long after midnight. No tourists, no flashlights, just the Atlantic pounding the cliff in a rhythm older than the base itself. The radar tower rises above you, a black silhouette against a sky that feels too large. The dish sits frozen, but the metal seems to remember. The days it turned like an eye searching for something beyond the horizon. The entrances to the underground are sealed, buried beneath earth and concrete. But the ground radiates a faint unease, as though the tunnels breathe through the soil. If you listen closely, not with your ears, but with that deeper sense used for fearing things you can't name, you may catch it. A pulse. Slow. Intermittent. A vibration that could be rust contracting in the cold, or something continuing its cycle long after the switch was thrown. If the Montauk project was a mistake, then that pulse is the ghost of regret. If it was an experiment, then that pulse is the residue of knowledge never meant to be known. The men who spoke publicly, Nichols, Bielik, Swerdlow, were flawed, contradictory human. They bled into their stories. They cracked. Some of what they said was impossible. Some was chillingly precise, but all of them repeated the same warning in different ways. Something happened there, something that didn't stay buried. So here's the last whisper, the one that lingers when you walk away. From the fence and the tower, fades into darkness. They sealed the doors, they burned the files, they silenced the men, but frequencies do not die, they only wait. If you ever stand alone at Camp Hero on a windless night, and you hear a rhythm rising from the ground, do not follow it. Do not approach the tower. Do not listen too long, because some echoes do not fade. They grow. They tighten around the edges of reality. And if the legends hold even a sliver of truth, the Montauk project was never truly shut down. It simply went quiet, waiting for someone to hear it again.